evening, everyone. Welcome to the first of 5 great Wisconsin Forum events of the year. It's great to see everybody back. I trust you've had a wonderful summer. I certainly have. It's been lovely here in Milwaukee this past summer. I'd like to first ask, by way of announcement, for everybody to take their cell phones out and turn them off, if you please. That would be most appreciated. Tonight I get to introduce my latest hero. Not only has Herman Mashaba amassed a tremendous wealth that perhaps might challenge the Donald himself, but he has upheld the principles so many of us share. And very unlike the Donald, I think you're going to find a story tonight about a gentleman who grew up in South Africa during apartheid and accomplished amazing things. Not through the traditional academic process that so many of us are familiar with, but through the School of Hard Knocks. And it's a remarkable story about success and change that's brought about through finding out what works and what doesn't work. It's a remarkable story, and he's going to share with you a little bit about his view of how the world works. I think you're going to find it to be fascinating. Since he was introduced to me as a potential speaker by our good friend Dr. Yuri Maltsa about a year ago, he's since written a book. In fact, it's just recently out, called Capitalist Crusader. And I encourage all of you to pick up a copy. If you like the presentation, I'm sure you'll like the book. Yuri's written the foreword, and I won't read any of it here, but let me just give you a quick background on Mr. Mashaba. He founded a cosmetics company, Black Like Me, of products back in 1985 and served as its chief executive officer until 2004 and remains a majority shareholder in this non-executive director of the company. He's an executive on more company boards now than you want me to read. There are many, and they are worldwide. He has, I think, accomplished more than many of us could imagine, but most importantly, I believe he's learned the principles that we all hold dear and has made the rest of his life a passion for helping others to learn about those principles that make the world work. So without further ado, perhaps we'll get a chance to hear his thoughts on other great economists and other great people that have spoken here before, and perhaps we'll kick off this season with a great first speaker, Mr. Herman Mashaba.
Thank you, Tim, and good evening, everyone. Really great to be here. First visit to Milwaukee, a second visit to Wisconsin. And I've been coming to the States for the last 25 years. And I'm actually finding this part of the United States very interesting, because over the years traveling to the United States, I've always come across less Americans who have not been to South Africa. But I'm finding a totally different situation here in Wisconsin. In the 2 occasions that I've been here, I think people from Wisconsin that have been to South Africa less than 5%. So it looks like I'll have to really go back home and get our tourism government departments to come and do a good job here, to really get you guys to come and really see the festival. But anyway, thank you very much, and I really hope that this presentation will inspire you to come and really visit this miracle of a country that I was born in, and obviously really been proud to really be the son of the country. What I'm going to really be taking you through quickly is really use my own personal life, spending over 56 years, just really give you a sense of what I call the South African economic freedoms, the contradictions, because I was really born and raised in a very, my life from an economic point of view has been going through turbulences, contradictions. You know, 1 minute you're free. Let's see if this is working. Oh, see, sorry, I've got it the other way around. So this is going to really take you through this journey. Born in 1956, 26th of August, 1956. So basically, 56 years ago, I was a little child after my mother dropping this capitalist you see in front of you. So I was still obviously a few months old. But then, really born a year after South Africa was taken over by Prime Minister H.F. Verwoerd. I don't know if you know this gentleman, the chief architect of apartheid. Served the National Party since 1948 when the National Party took over. At the time when the National Party took over, he was the Minister of Education. And this gentleman really hated anything black. It's really very strange. And but obviously he was the president, the Prime Minister of our country. He took over a year just before I was born in 1959. 9 years before I was born, the National Party passed a piece of legislation called the Suppression of Communism of 1950. This piece of legislation declared me a communist when I was born. Why I was declared a communist? Because this piece of legislation declared anyone who was proponents of black rights in South Africa was automatically declared a communist. Obviously, for virtue of being black, I was automatically a communist. But at the same time, some of our white counterparts, mainly belonging to the South African Communist Party, were also communist, and all of us were really declared communist. And this piece of legislation, the Communism Act of 1950, was replaced in 1982 by the Internal Security Act. The Internal Security Act was introduced post the 1976 Soweto riots. I don't know if you know, on the 16th of June 1976, the political direction of South Africa changed when Soweto students were forced to learn everything in Afrikaans, and all hell broke loose. And that's when they came out with this piece of legislation called the Internal Security Act. And this piece of legislation produced these two evil guys, Derek Coetzee and Eugene de Kock. Eugene died a few years ago, just actually before election or after. He came to the ANC and really exposed what the security guys used to do. And Eugene de Kock was just recently received a pardon, I think about 2-3 months ago, after saving over 20 years of his life in jail, because the political leadership distanced themselves against what they were doing, because these guys had unlimited powers to do as they pleased with detainees. A lot of our people disappeared. Even today we don't know where they are. Some of them actually go to an extent of actually banning their bodies. People who got arrested with no trial, and the family is not allowed to really know where they had a free rein to do as they pleased. But obviously they were given the powers by a piece of legislation in our country. And this whole process, as I'm growing up, being regarded as a communist, this is where I come from. Born in a small village where we had no electricity. Electricity for me, as I was growing up, was totally foreign to me. So we grew up going to steal water, going to steal wood to make fire, and every day coming back from school, we had to go and steal water. But at the same time, we were regarded as communists. So this way the communists that the National Party was afraid of. And we had to really come out with all this and justify the brutality against anyone who opposed them. And the tragedy about the situation of what you see here is that I was born and grew up in an environment where stealing was part and parcel of our lives. Because you can imagine every day we were to go steal water because we did not have. There was an African white farmer 2-3 kilometers away, so every day we had to go and steal water, sometimes at his farm when he was sleeping. And we would steal wood because we were not allowed to damage the environment. We expected to buy coal, which we couldn't afford. So for me, stealing, as when I was growing up, was part and parcel of our lives. My mother, working as a domestic worker in Johannesburg, she was a very unfortunate woman. She lost her husband when I was 2. Her husband, who happened to be my father, decided to die when I was 2. Leaving this poor woman to fend for 5 children on her own. And unfortunately, she did not have a commercial skill to support this family. So the only commercial skill she could provide was to go and clean white homes and look after white children. And come home once a month, bringing us stuff of whatever she collected and sharing this with my sisters. I'm a 5-6-year-old boy. Sharing with my sisters some of the stuff that she stole from her madam's pantry, So for me, this was cool. My mother was really providing for the family. And everyone in the community, my family wasn't really unique. This was happening in the entire community everywhere, all over the country. So stealing for us, and particularly if we were stealing from white people, you were encouraged and celebrated as a hero. And the tragedy of it is that every Sunday we go to church. So we weren't stealing because we were criminals, we were stealing for survival. Why I'm raising this with you, just bringing it to your attention, because people I grew up with, some of them obviously older, is the fact that now, 21 years into our democracy, we now see people are now stealing, people who are not like my mother, who was doing it for necessity. We have political leadership, so for them, stealing from the government, which was white at the time, so for them it looks like stealing from government or from whites is cool. So people actually are not even aware that this government is ours. So that's why today South Africa corruption is so rife that our political leadership don't see anything wrong with it, because they were born and brought up under this situation that they had the impression that government belongs to whites. In the meantime, the government belongs to South Africans today. So as I was really growing up, my life turned out to really be a gambler. In the townships or in our communities, we have boys playing the game of dice. And I became, by the time I was 16, 17, 18, actually turned out to really be a professional gambler on weekends. Friday, leaving school, I go to gambling dens, and I became what is known as an oxman. An oxman is the owner of the dice. And the owner of the dice, it's someone who controls the game, is the government of the day. And when we gamble in places like this, there's always lots of violence. So if you've got a weak government, there'll always be chaos and guys taking chances. So I actually became quite popular with the gamblers for liking to come and play in my game because I've always been a disciplinarian, the law and order, people who don't behave have the courage to kick them out and so forth. So I became a professional gambler. Why did I gamble? When I was growing up, I was actually taught or obviously witnessed the violence that white people used to really make against black people. So I grew up actually believing that white people are evil creatures. So I always avoided contact with them. And my grandfather, who adored me, grew up in front of him, who was a defeated man, his dignity taken away by many years of working for whites who were really terrorizing him. And he used to really warn me, says, my boy, please, for you to survive, avoid contact with whites because they'll take away your dignity. That's the only asset that you have. So don't be like me. So if you can avoid it, please do so. So I grew up actually with a sense of saying, look, I don't want anyone to really touch my dignity. I want it intact. So what would happen is, guys my age, when we were 15, 16, every Saturday morning, we wake up to work in the white neighborhoods, we do gardens and we pay the rent $150. And I avoided going there because I didn't want anyone to touch my dignity. But at the same time, I also wanted money. So what I'll do is buy a pair of dice and wait for those guys. They leave Saturday morning, 4 or 5 in the morning. They start coming back in the townships in the afternoon. I'll be waiting for them and we start gambling. And the poor guys with damaged dignity, trying to really make more money than what they worked for. Within an hour, they lose the money. And because they gamble thinking that they'll make more. In the meantime, it's not easy to really win, but especially if you're a weakling. So that's really how I ended up really being a gambler at a very early stage of my life. At the same time, while all this was happening, with terrible laws, past laws, Group Areas Act that really separated, made life difficult for us as black South Africans. The Soviet Union was the only government or country that was really openly supporting us as black South Africans, really giving open support to liberation organization outside South Africa. So what happened in the process, black South Africans equated capitalism, because obviously our government was for capitalism, that's what they claimed. That really created this socialist communist love by black South Africans. And at the same time, whites, particularly white male, from the age of 16, all of them had to go for military training to protect the country against this communist onslaught. And this is what is really obviously creating problems for us as a country to now. And we see later on why we're having a challenge. While all this was happening, I remember when I was 17, 18, the United States and Great Britain, under the leadership of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, two great leaders that represented what I grew up living in. America for us, watching movies, has always really been this dream world that I wanted to live in, freedom of human beings, because I believe very strongly that this country was developed because of the type of freedom that Americans enjoyed the last 78 years. But then, because of obviously the Cold War, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had to really protect South Africa from falling into the communist bloc. And the only way they could do this, United Nations will have resolution after the resolution to punish South Africa. And Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan will stop every resolution in the United States to punish South Africa. And that, unfortunately, was now really creating even much more hatred by blacks of this evil capitalist. They were really responsible for helping the the apartheid government to really to oppress us. But fortunately enough, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union, American civil society and the British really played a key role in the liberation of our country. And that's something that Americans and the British shouldn't really forget of the role that they played, because right now majority of our people in South Africa, and that's what is being preached by the government, is as if the Soviets were the ones that liberated South Africa. South Africa was actually liberated to a large extent by American civil society. In Washington, D.C., London, boycotts. The civil society in this country stood up to say this is enough to really allow a naval system like this to continue. So during this process, I was actually quite lucky as a gambler over the weekend. I've always grew up thinking and hoping that I'll get education to really give me the freedom that I so desperately needed in my life. So schoolwork was always really a priority in my life. Monday to Friday, and then weekends I went gamble to really make money. Managed to really pass my matric and went to university in 1979. I wanted to study law. That's what I applied to do, and I was accepted. But first week of orientation, discovered that I would not really be able to pursue a legal profession. Why? Because as much as I had good matric marks, but I failed Afrikaans. So in South Africa, during the apartheid years, we needed Afrikaans as for law, because the legal profession was run to a large extent in Afrikaans. So I then had to really change my educational plan, ended up registering for administration, majoring in political science and public administration. Second year of my studies, hoping that I was going to become a political scientist, a professor, and had an opportunity to leave South Africa when lecture or study further, whatever. But I knew education was going to give me that opportunity to leave the country. Second year of my studies, one morning, 6 o'clock, wake up, the university was surrounded by the police. And we were given 6 hours to leave the university. And you can imagine, we left the university, and I remember that day I did not even have a cent. And this university was about 4 hours away from home. Because South Africa at the time, we only had 4 universities throughout the country to cater for black South Africans. As much as I was born and brought up in Pretoria, after half an hour's drive from Pretoria, the University of Pretoria, a great university, but as a black South African, you're not allowed to really go to University of Pretoria. You had to go to the nearest for us in the north of to South Africa, in Johannesburg, Pretoria. The nearest university we had to go to was the University of the North, at Tafelberg. So we were asked to leave in 6 hours. Why do they close the university? Because 2 weeks before that, we've been boycotting classes because some of our colleagues were arrested. And we were calling on the university to assist that we get the police to release them. But instead of releasing them, they decided to send us home. And a month later, called us back. And that's when, unfortunately for me, my educational dream was completely shattered. Because when they called us back, I took a decision not to really go back. At the time, very angry black youth. And I felt that I needed to really speed up my independence. And I wanted to really leave the country and go and join other liberation movements outside South Africa. And again, the Russians, who are always despised, but at the time they were the only people who could give me an AK-47 and train me how to use it, and come back to South Africa and kill all these white evil people that I thought were responsible for my suffering. Look at it in retrospect, 36 years later. I was fortunate that I never had good context to get me out of the country, because it wasn't a question of just getting into a car or crossing the border. You had to have very strong context to get you out of the country, because Eugene de Kock and the internal security guys killed a lot of young people. Actually lure them into believing that there are contacts to take them out, because they always had to really guard against the young people leaving the country. So they even had a network to find ways to encourage you to really see who wants to. So you have to be very careful in terms of people approaching you to really be the ones taking you out of the country. So I was lucky that my contacts never came to the party. Then ended up with me having to 2 months later with the university open. I couldn't just really sit at home and wait for this contact. So we thought, let me do something in the meantime. So I found my first job. Worked for one company called Spar Pretoria. It's a supermarket distribution center. I worked for them for 7 months as a dispatch clerk, earning 175 rands a month. Was I happy with earning 175 rands? I did not have the education, I did not have the experience, and I was really so lucky. And something that I share with South Africans today, that I think I was really lucky that for me, that I started my working career in business under apartheid. Because today South Africa, a 20-year-old youth like Herman, 28 in those days, today those chances are not there any longer, and I'll share this with you. So I'm actually feel grateful that I started my business under apartheid, because I could really decide on my own in terms of who I wanted to work for and how much they were prepared to pay me. It had nothing to do with government. When I said to people, if Spar thought they exploited me, they made a terrible mistake, because I actually exploited that opportunity to learn and really decide my fate. They gave me 175 rands. I worked hard. Because of working hard, within 7 months, I attracted another company to recruit me. Give me 100 rands more within 7 months. And Spar was disappointed, tried to offer me more. It was already too late, because I was the one making the decision, not the government or labor organization. So I worked for the next company for 23 months. So basically I worked for 30 months of my life for a salary. So while working for this other company, Motani, that's when I decided and realized that chances of leaving the country are no longer there. And now I was 22, I decided, Herman, you're not going to be like your mother, your father, your grandparents, everyone in the community would work for 20, 30, 40 years. And afterwards they'll have nothing to show, because I grew up with older people in my community. They have absolutely nothing to show for their 40 years of hard work. Some of them work for the same company, but they had literally nothing to show. So I really felt, I'm not going to waste my life, I'm going to really do something. So I said, what are my options? My options was to really go into business. But then, 1982 in South Africa, black South Africans were not allowed to go into business. And I consciously took a decision that this is ridiculous. I'm not going to really comply with this unjust laws. I had absolutely nothing to lose. I said, I'm going to go into business anyway. But then, I had no business experience. I don't come from a business family. What were my options? You know, every day you get companies are looking for commission sales reps. If you want to sign your own check, you want to earn $1 million rands a month. And that's when I raised my hand. I said, that's me. But then to really be a commission sales rep, you needed a car. I don't know who gave me the wisdom. Before buying a car, I felt that I needed to stabilize my life. Because one other interesting aspect about all these contradictions about my life and the challenges, I also grew up obviously with the stealing. But now, another interesting aspect of my life, when I was 15, 16, as a boy or as a human being, your hormones start changing, starts giving you some signs. As I say to people, you wake up in the morning, there's one part of your body that's up. You don't know what's happening. Because we had no parents with us, so there was no one to really guide you. That it's another part of your human development. So the only people who could help you were your own peers. They said, now don't worry. To tell them, guys, every morning when I wake up, there's this problem. What do I do? So the older guy said, no, don't worry. This problem, us boys, God has given us gifts for us boys to enjoy. And he says, these are the girls, these are the solution to really get your body to relax. And the interesting part about it now, obviously, you're now taught by this, no parents, no family types, proper family structures. So for us as boys, we grew up really feeling that girls were a God-given gift for us boys to enjoy. And what was actually at the time great about it was that the more girls you had, the better respect you receive from your friends and your peers. So the more girls you had, you were now a star. You would really be respected by the boys. And obviously these poor girls as well, because they were growing up in this environment where there were no parents. And the girls would always think us men would really serve as their parent, as their dads, because the dads were working in mines and everywhere. So they had no parents to really protect them. And they thought the boys loved them. And in the meantime, boys had other agendas. So, and really caused havoc. So growing up in this environment, so when I thought of going into business, I realized, you know what happened, this kind of life is really very dangerous. If you want to go into business and buy a car, stabilize your life. I don't know where I got this wisdom from. I'm 22, and now there was one of these girls I was going out, she was 20, I'm 22, and I proposed to her to marry me. And naive as she was, she accepted my proposal. And I got married to her. And this woman has really been she's a remarkable human being because she plays such a key role in my life. But here am I with her 33 years later, still married to her with the biggest of friends. And the role that she played in really making sure that when I work hard, I have someone to talk to when I get home or phone or whatever. So she really played such a key role, and also obviously neutralized my devious ways that because I didn't want to interrupt my relationship with her. So I respected her, and that really helped. And as I say, this wisdom of going into business, getting stability was so key. So I got married, and then 2 months later, bought a car, and that was the birth of a salesman. That's when I started my business career as a commission sales rep, no longer working for anyone. And I actually started making money, being my own boss. But then I had a challenge with in South Africa with the pass laws. As black South Africans, you had to really have an identity document which your white employer signs on a monthly basis. And that piece of the document restricted you to be in a particular area. You were not allowed to live there. If they find you, you're out. And the police were there all the time, stopping blacks, sometimes actually waking us up at night to see if there are no strange characters in the community. So you had to carry this piece of document 24 hours, and you had to really be employed. But then I actually decided I'm going to live this criminal life. And I really learned to duck and dive from the police because as a commission sales rep and contributing to the economy of the country, I was illegal because I did not really have a white employer who could really sign me that I was working for them. Because it wasn't just that an employer will sign. The guys I was selling for on a commission basis, I wasn't working for them because I would represent 3-4 different companies at any point in time. So I lived like this for a couple of years until the pass laws were only abolished in South Africa in 1986, 1987. So all this time really lived like a criminal. But I was prepared to really take that game on. Always looked the best, and I really became an expert in ducking and diving from the police, which was almost an impossible task in South Africa because townships with the state of emergencies, our townships, our community always surrounded by the police, so going in and out, there'll be the police. I really became an expert in negotiating my way out. So fortunately enough, never arrested or put in jail. I always negotiate myself out of this difficult situation. So while obviously sailing on a commission basis, in 1983 came across a great opportunity to sell hair products for a company in Johannesburg, selling black hair products. They had a brand called Supercel, owned by a guy called Leon Thompson. I sold for him for about 19 months. And during this period, that's when I realized this minefield of opportunity. Black women in South Africa wanted to be pammed. And made up my mind, I said, Herman, you're not going to pay these women for Leon Thompson. Make a plan to really establish your own business in Pembrey. And then I did not really have manufacturing experience or expertise. I was just a trader and a salesman. Put together a plan to recruit like-minded South Africans to join me in this. I recruited these two guys. Joseph was one of the salesmen in the company with me. And there was this white Afrikaner guy, Johan Grill, who was the production manager in this business. In 1984 in South Africa, for black and white to really have an interaction was tantamount to treason. But I took a chance, I had nothing to lose. I needed a production person. So I had an opportunity to one day approach Johan to say, Johan, Joseph and I can sell the stuff and you can make it. You're working for Johan Thompson. Let's go and start our own business. And that wisdom and that chance really helped. Johan bought into this because he knew we were the top salesmen at any one commission. As black guys, we were earning 2-3 times more than Johan. He had a fixed salary, and Joseph and I were at any one commission. You know, something really very strange in South Africa in 1983 for to really be any white more than a white person. You know. So Johan bought into our dream, and he says, "Where are you guys going to get the funds from?" He says, "Just leave it to us, we'll sort it out." And we approached one black business guy in one of the townships, popular guy, he had a garage and other businesses. Approached him for funding to alter do it. This guy gave us the money to start our business. Very expensive funding. For me as a businessman, when I started my business with one of the most expensive funding structure. I had to pay Walter Prime plus 10, and I had to give him 25% shareholding in the business. And Prime in South Africa in 1985 sitting at 21%. So I had to pay 31% plus give him 21%, 10%, 25% shareholding in the business. And I feel, you know, the reason why I believe we succeeded. You know, watching in 1984, at the age of 24, really having a white guy as a partner, and I'm the one facilitating the relationship. And so at the same time, we were very capitalists. We wanted to really make the money. And we really started with a very powerful name, Black Like Me, that was not easy for anybody to ignore. And we were concerned that we might attract the PW Bottle's attention. But fortunately enough, I think having this white partner helped because they realized we're not a political organization, we're a beauty products, giving black women the dignity because our selling slogans have always really been around giving women a sense of belonging because people were here for the last 300 years. You know, their dignity taken away. So we said, guys, let's take advantage of giving those people, this market, to give them their dignity back, and they will reward us. And without any doubt, they rewarded us handsomely. But then, actually, before 1994, I mean, I managed to rebuild my own factory that paid out the loan with this guy over. I had 36 months to repay him, and I paid it back in 7 months. And built my own factory by 1990, 6,000 square meters, a state-of-the-art factory, and I did not owe anybody a cent. That obviously just give you a sense of how successful our company was from day one. And at the time, South Africa, with the state of emergency, a terrible period of our history, but we really worked hard and really made money in the process. And then 1990 came, 22nd of February 1990, FW took all of us by surprise in the world. Opening of Parliament on the 2nd of February announced the unveiling of political parties, the release of Mandela, and allowing all the exiles to come back without any consequences. I mean, that day, as South Africans, we can never forget because it really took all of us by surprise. But then the challenge was, now what's going to happen? Because obviously the political leadership is out of prison, Mandela is out, and exiles are coming back into the country. And now you can imagine this 300 years of racial divide. Is it possible to really put it together? What's really the challenge that South Africa really had? But eventually, 27th of April 1994 came. We had exceptionally successful elections. With Mandela being crowned on the 10th of May 1994 as the first democratically elected president of the country. And our country was so blessed to really have a guy like this, coming out of 300 years of racial polarization, really worked hard to really claim to that rainbow nation that won the hearts and minds of the world. And I think for the first time in our lives, really freedom was there eventually. And Mandela sold the future to all of us. And it was really proud to really be a South African for the first time in our lives, that I could really say I'm a South African. Because before that, as blacks, we were not allowed to really be called South Africans. Just before, while the negotiations were happening with the challenges of Africa, was quite unfortunate. On the 17th of November 1993, criminal elements took advantage. One morning, got woken up at 1 in the morning that my factory was on fire. And I lost that entire manufacturing facility overnight. But fortunately enough, now that apartheid structures were collapsing, we could buy property anywhere in South Africa as long as we had the money. So 2 weeks later, I bought a new facility, started rebuilding my business. And it was really difficult, painful, dark period of my life for 2 years rebuilding this. And the consumer doesn't really actually wait for you. And I was using my own resources because as Black South Africans, our relationship with the bank was just to go and put money. Banks were not interested in black business in South Africa. So we had to really depend and rely on our own personal cash flows to really survive. And fortunately enough, 1997, Colgate approached me. I had lots of other offers, but I preferred the Colgate one. Sold 75% of my business to Colgate Palmolive. Excited with this opportunity to now go into a relationship with this 100-year successful global company that created this great brand, Colgate. I said, we're going to take Black Lagoon global and be successful like Colgate over time. For some reason, my business just refused to be part of a big international organization. It just refused. I mean, Colgate and I really tried every trick in the book to make this business work and just refused. Then 18 months later, they said to them, guys, just really buy 25% to let me walk away and go and really find something else to do. I was lucky, I had good corporate advisors. 6 months later, I ended up being the one buying the business back from Colgate. Took it back 1st of August 1999. Obviously, it's another presentation for MBA students. This was a great learning experience for me. And in 2001, Parliament at the time, government under Thabo Mbeki, they started coming out with legislation to force white companies to really have black people in our businesses. Started debating what eventually a piece of legislation called Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment passed. So from the beginning, from 1994, they've always really this whole issue around white companies inviting black people to invest in their businesses. Never had interest. I had my own business to run. I just had the factory to rebuild. They sold my business to Colgate. So I had no time to really entertain anyone asking me to come and invest in their businesses. But now with legislation in place, I realized with or without me, this is a reality. But at the same time, that doing the transaction with Colgate gave me another great opportunity. I realized, you don't just really make money by paying women. You can actually make more money by developing businesses and selling them. Because all of a sudden I come to, I run this business one day, Colgate comes with this huge check. You make it difficult for me to resist, and I took it. And then 2 years later, I buy it at a price I was very happy with. And I realized, you know what, I'm not going to worry myself about paying women. It looks like, investing in companies, you really make serious money. So that's when I started a company called the Party Investments. I started investing in businesses. Today, sitting with a nice portfolio of investments, obviously my beauty products. I'm no longer actively involved in the business. I've got my partners who in 2005 I sold them 50% of the business. So they're running the business. My wife looks after that investment for me. So I just really serve as a non-executive chairman. And I've got lots of other investments in financial services, in real estate, and I've got a nice size portfolio with 3 people that I've employed for the last 12 years. Myself and my personal assistant and my financial manager. So I've got 3 people I employ directly. So I have no responsibility any longer to be worrying about employing 1,000 people running a beauty products business. I've got my partners worrying about that. So I invest and I target small businesses that we develop, and I've really had some luck, to where I bought into small businesses, and 4 or 5 years down the line, someone comes and throw a check at us. So I always actually pray, go to church to make sure that as I develop this business, someone must come and throw a check at me. But then I've really been fortunate that it gives me an opportunity to do now things that very few people in the world have got that opportunity. As a capitalist, then it really gives me to really use my privilege, my position as a privileged South African, to really get involved in civil society, use my privileged position, and really make the difference in the lives of other people. As a capitalist, that's why I'm so proud, unapologetic capitalist. I like the system because it has given me the freedom that human beings in life deserve. Where I can make money and my family can only have maximum of 3 meals a day. And I make more money than they can eat. Even if they can eat 50 times a day, they won't, So I have the opportunity to really play a role in society. But my life is not dictated by politicians to tell me where I must spend my money on. As long as I would make sure that I'm legally registered, I pay my taxes. And because of the type of role that I do, I'm always very careful with my taxes, because government would really want to control business by intimidating us on making sure that whatever they can cash you on. So it really gives me that opportunity to try and really be a good citizen and be a good human being. But at the same time, be an apologetic capitalist and really make money and spend time in society. So, with all this happening, Mr. Mandela only served one period, one term because of age. He was really one of those great human beings. Only served one age because of age, decided to move on and give the office to Thabo Mbeki, who was serving as his deputy. And Thabo Mbeki served 2 years, but he couldn't really finish his term. But then what happened during Thabo Mbeki's term, his first term was great. There was this South African leader who was talking about African Renaissance and encouraging African leaders and government to be accountable and so forth. And he formed started what we call the African Renaissance Initiative. Great initiative that I know personally I was one of the big supporters of this African Renaissance, because the only ways that Africa can progress is to really have accountable democratic government. So I don't know really what happened to Thabo Mbeki in his second term. Started becoming something else that we never thought. It started with our north neighbor, Mr. Mugabe, started this land expropriation in Zimbabwe and really destroyed a beautiful country. And to our surprise, Thabo Mbeki looks like was a friend to Mr. Mugabe. That's when I said, what the hell is going on? This man who is promoting African Renaissance, accountable leadership, is someone really destroying his country. And at the same time, human rights abuses of his own people as well. Anyone who was on his way to, I'm sure you're aware about Mr. Mugabe's style. one of the longest serving dictators in our continent, and he's just really around the corner from us. And for any African leader to support someone like this, honestly, it's beyond man comprehension. But unfortunately, for some reason, including the African Union, they support one another with all this. We just don't understand. That's when I started getting really very concerned. And now the consequences of this, I mean, in South Africa, Thabo Mbeki was recalled, and the ANC was taken over by Mr. by Jacob Zuma, who's the current president, brought into power by the South African Communist Party and COSATU, which is the trade union movement. So today we're sitting with a huge challenge in our country where we don't really know what the ANC is all about, because the majority of its cabinet ministers and parliamentarians are trade union members and the so-called Communist Party. And in the process, we'll really show you what's happening next. And obviously now dominated with labor laws that really destroying small businesses. That's really what's happening in our country today. And our education system today, 80% of our public schools in South Africa are dysfunctional. Because the unions are the ones in charge, and it looks like Mr. Zuma is comfortable with the situation. And what is also even more scary for me are this race-based legislation. Our government right now in South Africa is talking about radical transformation, and radical transformation is about discrimination against whites, South Africans. And I'm one of the South Africans openly opposed to this, that I don't want to really live in a society that discriminates against other South Africans. In 1994, Mr. Mandela promised us this rainbow nation. How come we pass in law after law to really discriminate against fellow South Africans? Because obviously all these government failures are attributed to whites refusing to cooperate, to transform. Any failure by government, whites are responsible. And this government has been in power for 21 years. But they will obviously even blame Jan van Riebeeck. You know, Jan van Riebeeck is the one who came to South Africa in 1652. So our president would stand up in parliament and blame Jan van Riebeeck for today's problem. So I keep on saying now, are we expected to wake, there's no way that we'll even find Jan van Riebeeck's grave. So don't we really have the ability, the capacity? So they are actually undoing everything that Mandela wanted to do for South Africa, his own party, which is really quite unfortunate. And in the process, we're saying chronic capitalist. Imagine, because obviously all these guys who are getting government tenders and the other ones closer to government, working with all the political guys as their partners, the president's family, the richest people in the country. I mean, the level of corruption in my country is getting totally unacceptable. And the threat to the rule of law. You know, last Thursday, the president announced the same gentleman who 3 months ago, the High Court found this gentleman to really be dishonest, with no integrity. He lied under oath in court. And South Africa was surprised by the president appointing this gentleman as the head of the Hawks. The Hawks is a special investigative unit to investigate corruption and so on. So the president appointed this gentleman as the head of the Hawks. And I remember on Friday morning, if I left home, one of the radio stations was interviewing this gentleman and was asked a question about this pronouncement by the judge. And he said, if he wasn't an honest man, the president would not have appointed him. So that is what does this say about the rule of law in my country? Because obviously they're taking advantage of having 62% of the voters behind them. And what's now happening in our country? When you have freedoms of South Africans being taken away from them, you start interfering with the economy, you get punished. 2 weeks ago, GDP numbers were released. South Africa, the last quarter, our economy shrunk by 1.3%. We had a negative 1.3%. And a quarter before that, we had 1.3% growth. So as I'm talking to you right now, South Africa's GDP is flat. What are the chances of it coming out of this? One thing I can guarantee is that the next set of GDP results coming out, they're going to come out negative. We'll be lucky if they're not, chances of them being negative are very slim. And at the same time, we sit with one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. 36% of our people are not working. In a country of 50 million South Africans, 16 million South Africans are on social welfare. Government has created a situation where they're getting poor South Africans, unfortunately blacks, to really believe that the solution to their future is dependent on government taking over everything. And give them social grants, give them T-shirts, give them food parcels from time to time, build some shady houses from time to time, and really using the state media to really create this. And yeah, that's really what happened last year. 62%, 11 million South Africans gave them the legitimacy to run the country. So the actual casualties of this bad administrations are the ones that have put this government into power. The educational outcomes, that's why I keep saying to people that I'm personally convinced that government does not really want to see black people educated, because our president has made it very clear that clever blacks are the enemy of the state. Because once blacks get educated, then they vote for someone else and they question the government. So their survival is dependent on black people remaining public slaves of the government. But obviously government will agree with me, but I don't really judge people on their intentions. I judge people on their actions, on their results. You can preach one thing, but at the end of the day, I judge people on their results. So that is why, unapologetically, my own belief is that our government is really happy to see black people as public slaves of the state, relying on the state to provide for them. 6 million tax base, providing for the 16 million South Africans, with an economy that's not growing. Is that sustainable? You don't even have to really be an economist to realize that you're sitting at a time bomb. This bus is going to crash one of these days. Will it crash overnight? Fortunately enough, we've still got another 3-4 years before it can crash. But some of us have really taken the position to understand that we've got to stop this bus from crashing with us, and really use the democratic processes and our constitution in place to actually really challenge these bad policies. And at the same time, obviously their survival also is dependent on polarizing us along racial lines. So it's good for them to blame whites. Every failure of our government is because whites are not cooperating. So to telling black people that they're not working, they're poor because whites don't want to change. Yes, the whites are still racist. So, and I keep appealing to South Africans, actually I wrote an article an opinion piece that appeared in yesterday's Sunday Times around the danger of this government policy. They're polarizing us along racial lines that will pay dearly if we don't really stop this. Because somewhere along the line, I gave them an example of Rwanda with the Hutus and Tutsis. And this were the same people, but then in South Africa it will be easy. With white and black, it's easy to really see who's who. So I actually wrote an opinion piece which the Sunday Times released yesterday, and I watched Twitter this today to look at really some of the black people in South Africa are not really very happy with me because they think I'm there to protect white interest. Because obviously a black person is not supposed to question government. It's not supposed to question black government. When you question a black government, then you call them names. But I'm happy to really live with a name calling and sit back and think that I live in a normal society. So I'm happy to really accept the consequences. So that's really our country. And at the same time, with I'm sure you must have heard of the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Because we have all this legislative framework, labor legislative framework, that's taking away the incentives of black people to work, uneducated ones, because government is talking about minimum wages and all these beautiful things that people must get. So they pass laws to make it difficult for small businesses to employ these unskilled people. And so South Africa, being a big economy like this, we're sitting with millions of Zimbabweans, Nigerians, Pakistanis. And when these people come into South Africa, because obviously that's economic situation, they go and live in poorer areas. And these poor areas where people obviously have no incentive to work because they're demanding more. So Zimbabweans, the Nigerians, they're happy to go and work in this environment. 2-3 years down the line, because of this illegals working, their families improve. Yes, South Africans got jealous to say, you know, these people are taking our jobs. Because honestly, the illegal guys don't care about the labor legislation. They will work for whoever can pay for their services. But it really creates a problem for us as a country. From time to time, we have these attacks with the foreigners being chased away from the communities and really putting our country at risk. But obviously, our government believes with South Africans, they will buy them food and give them T-shirts and put more and more people into the social network. And in the process, the danger of this, which I'm actually appealing to our government, is seeing the collapse of the black family structures. Because when families don't work, how do you expect children to respect their parents who can't provide for them? Young girls are incentivized to make babies. The more babies you make, the more money government gives you. So, and these young girls don't have to care about who their father is because the ANC government is there to look after them. So you bring up kids who don't have fathers, and by the time they reach 14, 15, they become a danger to society. Boys are into drugs and into criminality because they're brought up by mothers who don't really care. And then girls, by the time they reach 12, 13, they follow the same pattern as their mothers. So we're creating this, but the government to solve this is to keep giving them more money and obviously look for getting more taxes from us as business people, as capitalists. But they don't realize that with the economy not growing, one of those days they're not going to be collecting taxes as they used to. Actually, 2 months ago, our revenue collected 10 billion less than their budget. But still, they don't really see it as a problem. Actually, the president and the deputy president, the last few months in parliament, even with these numbers, they are saying the economy is doing very well. And I keep saying to South Africans, I think, because these guys, they are looting the country and their families are making money, they think their families are government. So when your family is making money to left, right, and center from all this corruption, so you think the whole country is like that. They actually fail to realize that the economy, it's what it is. You can't mess around with the numbers. So this, unfortunately, really put our country at risk. So a few years ago, I really started getting concerned with what was happening in South Africa. One day I called Leon Lowe, the executive director of the Free Market Foundation. I've always been a financial supporter of the Free Market Foundation for many years. So one day I called Leon Lowe for lunch and said, Leon, what can we do to save our country? I get all these beautiful newsletters from you. And you're talking to the converted, but I said, what can we do to really reach a majority of our people? I fortunately discovered that Leon needed much more than money. but because I was not really prepared to sit back, I then took over the chairmanship of the Free Market Foundation to help to find a way to really make the difference in South Africa, because I think I've always really been someone who believes in all the beautiful things that Leon and the Free Market Foundation in South Africa is doing. I thought, let me use this vehicle to really make the difference in South Africa. 2 months into my chairmanship of the Free Market Foundation, managed to bring in another 10 business guys in South Africa to join me on the board. And I was meeting with these guys every month. And managed to convince them that, you know what, guys, we can't just really be writing articles. We've got to do more than this. I think we don't have time on our side. So I then convince them that we take legal action against government. I've always really been against some aspects of labor laws in South Africa since the new government came into power. They were really abusing their power, unions controlling every aspect of our lives. Contacted some of the big legal minds in South Africa, took them away on a weekend to go and unpack what was it that we could really challenge against the labor laws in the country. Fortunately enough, the lawyers brought in a very interesting aspect that can easily be challenged. In South Africa, we under the Labour Relations Act, there's one section, Section 32 of the Labour Relations Act, with the bargaining councils. I don't know how this piece of legislation went through our parliament, but obviously it went through because the ANC members of parliament are just voting machines. They do what the party tells them to do. Bring in legislation, they won't even read. And I was saying to South Africa, the day when we go to court, and we're going to court on the 9th and to the 12th of August, of November, that members of ANC of parliament, they have no clue what they passed. Because this piece of legislation allows bargaining councils, which are controlled by labor and big business. What they do on a regular basis, they agree on conditions of employment for their particular sector, on minimum wage and all the conditions. And obviously big business is too scared of labor because they'll be called racist and so to white big business, they just really been really too scared of ANC. So, and they obviously, they'll really work it out. So they agree on this great packages. And I mean, if you look at the labor organizations, South Africa have done a great job for their members the last 21 years, putting pressure on big business in South Africa. But then in the process, once they then sign this agreement, the Minister of Labour must extend this agreement to everybody else who's in the particular sector. So that's why I've also said to South Africans many times that I'm also happy that I started my business under apartheid, because when I started my business in 1985, I didn't pay people based on their own situation. I was paying people based on what I could afford. And I did not really need, I don't need government to tell me that I must look after people who add value to my life. I've got people who've been working for me for more than 20 years. And I don't have those people because I'm forced by government to keep them. I keep them because they are valuable members of my organization. But unfortunately, with this labor legislation today now in our country, when you're a small businessman, you're another Herman, 20-year-old, you have no chance because overnight you must compete with big companies. So I started a business like going to the cosmetics. Overnight I must pay the same salary as Unilever or Estee Lauder or whatever. So you have no chance of a worker. And these guys have got bargaining council inspectors going around closing down businesses every day. Close one business after, they don't care. Because if you're in the engineering or you're in whatever, you have to pay the same salary as that. If you don't, they close you down. They don't really care. And government is happy with us. So what we are challenging as the Free Market Foundation is not even government not extending. So we said we just really want one weight in the act to be changed. Because the act today says the Minister of Labour must extend the agreements. So we want this must to change to May. So that when the minister gets these agreements, before extending them to other people, we say, Minister, please apply your mind to see if the agreements are also fair to other members of society. This court case has cost me and my family a fortune up to today, because government has been refusing for the last 2.5 years to go to court, come up with all sorts of excuses. So I'm actually spending my family money to empower our government to be sensitive and be responsible for the entire society, not union members. Government is not interested, including a month or so ago, threatening to call people to boycott my products and my companies. But fortunately enough, I live in a free democratic country. I can't be threatened, intimidated by criminality. So I've called on them to boycott. It's up to them. People work for their money, they work hard. If they want to boycott, I don't really need any favor from anyone. So if you must boycott, please, I said, do it yesterday. And I really mean it. If they want to boycott, because they were asking me to drop the case, and I said, no, I'm not dropping. And I was lucky enough with all these threats, probably must have made Chief Justice to realize that they've got to really make up their mind. And a few weeks later, I was given a date, and the 9th to the 12th of November this year. It's going to be historic in our country. I'm going to be given an opportunity, and I issued a statement that I've waited for this day for the last 2.5 years, where I can be in an open court of law with the Minister of Labour in South Africa to tell South Africa and the 8.5 million unemployed South Africans, small businesses that have been destroyed, as to why she's supporting this piece of constitutional piece of legislation. On Friday before I left, in fact, I received all the letters today, a few hours ago from my legal team, because they told me on Friday the government was asking for an extension and the postponement of this case. And I said to him, over my dead body, waited 2.5 years, I'm not prepared to wait any longer. They have absolutely no reason whatsoever. And fortunately enough, the date can't change unless I accept, and I'm not accepting it, as long as I'm still alive. So they've got an opportunity to let them get their lawyers to use my texts to come and defend their argument as to why they believe this piece of legislation must remain in our statute book. So it's going to really be a very interesting period of the history of our country, to the outcome of this piece of legislation. In closing, just over the years of really being as a capitalist, I didn't go into business to be acknowledged, and I've really received various acknowledgements from various universities and business organizations. 2 years ago, receiving an honorary doctorate from one of the universities in South Africa, at UNISA and so forth. So it's really been great as a capitalist there to make money, and people give you acknowledgement in the process. And because I get invited by universities in South Africa and most parts of the world from time to time to share my business, my personal experience with them, and I can only give you an hour or so of my time. So I thought, let me write a story about my life. It looks like people are interested to really know who this Herman is. And I wrote a book called In Black Like You, sold many copies, and to my surprise today I saw 2 American Wisconsin bought that book. A great surprise. And on Thursday night before I left South Africa, I launched my second book titled Capitalist Crusader. And I also decided on a very controversial name again, because I find it really very strange that capitalists like myself, the last 30, 40 years, we are being accused by socialists, and every time we are being accused, we accept and really put our heads in the sand. And I said, no, this is unacceptable. And I think this book is not just really for South Africans, it's really going to encourage capitalists all over the world. Let's stand up and really defend what we stand for. Because capitalist, am I a bad person? Honestly, I don't really believe I am. If I look at my involvement right now, I'm spending my money to empower governments, but they're not interested. If I wasn't a capitalist, I wasn't making money, I would not really have the resources to help people. I'm not just really talking, I'm actually doing it. And I've got a lot of other charities and organizations that I support. And I know what I do, it's nothing compared to some of the great capitalists all over the world, particularly in this country. They have made a fortune over the years, and today they really have formed great foundations where they help in society. But that's why I don't understand why then we must apologize. Whereas the socialists can only talk. If I really look at people in my country in particular will keep on really preaching the socialist agenda in terms of their taste and appetite for capitalistic benefits. I can tell you, I can't really compete with them. And you can imagine the capitalists like me, you know, can only eat 2 meals a day, can only drive one car. If I can buy 2 cars, where am I going to drive? Because even that one car, honestly, I don't have enough time to drive. But capitalists, the Secretary General of the Communist Party, Mr. Peyton Zimande, when he was appointed as Minister of Education, the first thing that he did, he bought 2 most expensive cars. One in Cape Town and one in and you look at him, and I challenge anyone, please, you can Google him, look at his physical posture before he became a minister, and look at him today. I don't know what is just being fed. You can see this man is really having the time of his life. And capitalists like myself, you can see me losing weight. So something is not right somewhere. Future prospects for South Africa, I'm actually quite excited. There's a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because fortunately now for the Tripartite Alliance, it's in turmoil today. The union organization, COSATU, is imploding. And my court case is going to even create more problems for them. Because the day when I win the case, I cannot see why the government will still really have Labour as their partners. They have no reason to. But we'll see the outcome. But on their own, they've lost the biggest trade union movement. NUMSA was kicked out of COSATU sometime beginning of this year. They are now forming another Labour organization. It's beautiful for a country that, you know, because the government, the ANC, has been using COSATU to mobilize because COSATU, just since 1985, they've got structures in the communities with the worker to mobilize voting support for the ANC. But now with COSATU imploding, it's going to really be interesting for the future of South Africa. And I think we have a constitutional democracy in place. That's why today, as a South African, I can stand in front of South Africa, write books, write articles, and I won't disappear. But under apartheid, I can tell you I would long be dead. I think we wouldn't know where I disappeared to. So this is really beautiful. It's great to really live under this democratic dispensation. And that's why I'm prepared to put my body on the line to ensure that I protect this democracy. There's just no way that I'm going to allow another man to oppress me again. There's no way that is going to happen. That I'm going to let another man oppress me and take away my freedom and I keep quiet. No chance. So, and I know millions of South Africans are going to really be joining us. And I think we're happy we've got a free, robust media, and government actually forgets that we're not living under the Soviet Union. Today in South Africa, we're not relied on the government to feed us information. We've got free, robust media, black journalists that are writing every day about all the nonsense. Investigative journalists, they're exposing the corruption every day. But obviously right now, because of the majority that they have in parliament, they don't really care. But fortunately enough, with our elections coming again next year, it's going to really be interesting to really see the outcome. And also the emergence of strong opposition parties. That's the reason why last year after the elections I decided to step down as the chairman of the Free Market Foundation, because ANC has always been threatening poor people not to vote for the Democratic Alliance because it was led by a white person, that it's a white party that going to bring back apartheid, and the Democratic Party is the future of our country, and I've been a voter of them for many years. You know, after ANC got 62%, which I found it bizarre, then for the first time in my life, I took membership of the Democratic Alliance and issued a press statement, and all hell broke loose. And I just really wanted to send a signal to black South Africans that this whole nonsense of saying that the Democratic Party is a white party is nonsense. Yes, I'm a black person. God made me this way, and I'm voting for this party. So, and I can see in South Africa that without any doubt, next year's local government election is going to be interesting to see if ANC will still win some of the big metros in our country. And we're also seeing the emergence of strong white based black middle class. And this black middle class, I know our president doesn't like them because when you become a middle class and you don't support corruption, then you're not black enough, because they are accused of not really being black enough. But people in the middle, they're educated to really understand, and I think it's good for our country. And also the business sector, which has been too scared of the ANC, we're now challenging them to do something about this. And lastly, it's the eyes of the world. You know, for us to go out and share this in South Africa and the world, share it so the world to actually understand that South Africa is really facing a huge challenge. Actually, about 6 months ago, I supported one white organization called Solidarity. They put it together a program to take to United Nations, and I'm in full support, and I'm actually encouraging them to do this as a matter of agency. Take the South African government to the United Nations around this race-based legislation. South Africa is a signatory to the United Nations against racism, but at the same time they're passing laws to discriminate against other South Africans. So I'm calling on South Africans wise to say, please, let's take this matter to the United Nations like they do during apartheid. Take the apartheid government to the United Nations. I think the sooner we do this, the better, because I don't want to really, I can't sit back and watch South Africa's own government really discriminating and polarizing us in this manner. So really I'm excited about the future of my country, and I hope that I can see more visitors and people coming to visit and really see our beautiful country. So thank you very much for this. If we have time for questions, I'm happy to take questions. You can be here for the entire night. I have all the time in the world. Can I have water, please? Okay, I'm happy to listen, to take your questions.
I'm listening to a radio like the fourth time to Herman during the last couple of days, and I think that it's a very powerful message not only to South Africa, for all of us. And I was last time in South Africa was interviewed by Several to again, which is very important. And I was asked when South Africa will look like the United States. I said very soon. Very soon we will look like South Africa.
Oh, yes.
And we have the same problem. And thank you so much for doing it also. Not only for South Africa, for people all over the world. I think this is great.
So it looks like you have another question here.
Thank you very much. Do you believe that the elections being held in South Africa are free and not influenced at all by the government or any corruption in the election process?
Not actually in the actual voting itself. The Democratic Alliance, the party I vote for, they have volunteers and they have capable people to really monitor. And actually last year when the elections were held in South Africa, I was out of the country, but I voted before I left. And I was in Switzerland at the time when I got this result, and I phoned my contacts. I said, what do you think? And the Democratic Alliance is generally happy with the outcome. The elections are free and fair. But people are influenced by all the social programs and so forth that they're getting from government, and being scared of voting for so-called right parties because they're afraid that they'll bring back apartheid. So it's a reality. So we have to really deal with this issue purely democratically and really find ways to really influence the casualties of this bad administration, because the people who are voting for the government are the biggest casualties. But obviously they don't know, because they think under apartheid they'll never have a president who would throw a big party and dance with them. And they don't have the government that can really give them food parcels and to give them the food at school, and to put 16 million people on social accounts. So, yeah, we still believe definitely we're quite satisfied with the integrity of the outcome.
So, if I understand this correctly, your lawsuit is about changing the collective bargaining agreement insofar as one word is all you want changed, from must to might. How do they defend against that? Is that strictly a union thing, that they want the power to force everybody?
Yeah, well, Tim, I just can't explain it. I've really written and I've been interviewed. If you Google, including actually going to YouTube, I did a 5-minute video after launching this case to explain to people what this court case is about. And if you get home after going to your YouTube, going to the Free Market Foundation Constitutional Challenge, the 5 minutes video where I explain this. And the whole exercise to empower government not to be forced by private parties with private interest to impose these agreements on other people, that the government is not interested. And I think the government is the only one that can answer this question. And as soon as I got the date, I issued a press statement that the date has arrived for me to really be with the Minister of Labour in this country to tell us why she's defended this piece of legislation. And even up to today, she's not responded. And there are lawyers on Friday. I've got a letter that my lawyer sent me a few hours ago, asking me to really give them another date. So I don't know. Basically, it looks like they're not interested to come to court. Are they going to come to court? We don't know. We'll see on the 9th of November if they will appeal court.
I just love it. You've got them back into a corner where they're having to defend themselves, wanting to take away their own power and give it to the people.
So you can imagine what this cost my family today. You see, and fighting with the Department of Labor, Department of Justice, 35 labor organizations, and these are powerful groups with lots of money. They're sitting with billions. And government using my taxes. And unfortunately, big business in South Africa, when I launched this court case and supported it on my own, I thought I'll get other business people to really come to the party. People are too scared of government. So I'm the only stupid, naive guy in South Africa single-handedly taking over the government. But I'm not crying.
Do you have reason to believe that the judiciary is going to be impartial and fair?
Well, it's a tricky question. We had this debate with our legal team when we launched this court case. But fortunately now, this is a constitutional matter. Unfortunately, I can't take it direct to the Constitutional Court. So if the High Court judges are going to be handpicked, I can assure you that as soon as I lose the case, they can be assured that I'm going to appeal and take it to the Constitutional Court. And the Constitutional Court judges in South Africa, I have 200% confidence in them. So if the High Court there, I can't guarantee that they might not really handpick someone that I don't have control over. But this is a constitutional matter. So if judges in the High Court, they don't agree with me, that's fine. I will immediately launch the Constitutional Court challenge. It's just that I think if I could go direct to the Constitutional Court, that's where I would have gone, but it's going to go through the High Court. So then I don't have control, but I think I have confidence in the overall judicial system in our country. So thank you very much. Let's go and have a drink and party.
Before you leave, I have something for you. There's a bag right behind us. Just a token of our appreciation for your coming to Wisconsin. And we want to share a little bit of Wisconsin with you. And let you take it back to South Africa. And remember all your friends here. Can anybody guess what I might be giving away? I don't know if you know that much about Wisconsin. We love our Packers. We are America's Dairyland. And we've been America's Dairyland for a long, long time, even though we do not, at this point in time, produce the most cheese in the world. It's taken over by California now, but I would say you are an honorary cheesehead. And you can also tell your friends when you go back to South Africa that I visited Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is known for Harley Davidson and Miller beer. What a dangerous combination. So we'd like you to take back a proud Miller beer shirt as well. I intended to have a miniature Harley Davidson for you. Unfortunately, I was unable to find one in time. But you'll have to remember the Harley Davidson as well.